Tonight we're going to discuss the story of 1001 Nights. There are over 300 stories, so for now we're just going to talk about what 1001 Nights was and
one of its lesser known.
One of its lesser known stories.
The Enchanted Horse.
The Enchanted Horse. So here we go.
You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as always, I'm just Dusty. Still here, still talking. And this is my lovely, beautiful, amazing, intelligent wife, Kymbo.
Hey, yo, I'm Kymbo.
So, yeah, we're going to try a new thing here. Come at you guys with some stories, and we hope you enjoy it. Take it away, Kim.
All right. So, the 1001 Nights story itself revolves around a Persian king named Shahryar. I'm not very good with the names, I'm sorry. Well, he found out that his wife was a cheating bitch, so he kills her, and the man that she was having the affair with. So, after that, he kind of went crazy and was like, I'm going to marry a virgin every day and then kill her by morning. Fucking a bit extreme.
I still think it was just misunderstood. Someone just overheard him telling one of his boys, like, I've been slaying them virgins. Just fucking slaying it. Ooh, he's been killing virgins.
Well, the kingdom started to run out of virgin. So it was, like
the great virgin shortage of 04. Yeah.
And the king's vizier's daughter, Shahrazad, came up with a plan and offered herself as the next wife to him.
Shahrazad, I choose you.
And she was an incredibly gifted storyteller, so she started telling him a story, but stopped midway in the middle of the night and told him that we'll finish this tomorrow. And so she would finish the story the next night and start a new one, stopping midway again so that he wouldn't kill her the next morning again. But this continued for 1001 nights.
Basically like Lost.
Yeah, and it's just each one has its own separate story.
The same exact experience.
Some of them are actually
watching.
Connected to each other, like pretty. Like she would use characters from an old story, and then they would be the star of the next story, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the story itself, Shahrazad had 3 boys, all, over the course of 1001 days, So one would be walking, one was crawling, and one was, still a babe right there on her tit.
Ah, goddamn. I guess 1001 days is enough time for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Considering, yeah.
Yeah, you're like 3 years.
Yeah. It's 3 years she's been telling him stories.
Damn. Yeah, getting blue-balled on his story every night.
Well, clearly he wasn't getting... Oh, yeah.
I mean, he clearly wasn't getting fully blue-balled if she put out 3 kids.
Yeah.
This is my story. Go on. I'm just going to start doing my thing.
So she goes to him and asks for a favor, which he replies, anything, I'll give you anything. So she asks for her kids, and so the king demands the guards to gather his kids. She puts their boys in front of her and says, I have told you a story for 1001 nights, but I'm afraid that I'm out of stories to tell. I have given you 3 heirs, and I beg you not to let them grow up motherless. I wish for you to release me from being beheaded as you have decreed with your previous wives. And Shahryar,
Charizard, I choose you.
Yes. Exclaimed that that thought had left him long ago and that he loved her dearly. And they lived happily ever after.
Oh.
So the story goes.
Yeah, the kingdom was able to regrow its virgin crops.
That's a quick, short summary of what the story itself was about. But she was really good at her storytellings. I really appreciate some of them. Clearly, she was that good.
Clearly, yeah. It's got 1001 nights of storytelling. That's a lot of stories.
That's a lot of time, man. And then having to keep remembering these fucking stories and then remembering the characters that are from them, because she would go back and forth all the time using characters. Like she would start out in Alibaba with that whole tale and then say the tailor to the bride of the end of the story was, this guy. And then this guy had his whole story, and then one of his kids had a whole story of their own, but she wouldn't talk about those, like, right away. She would, like, break them up and be like, do you remember this guy from the story I told you this time? Yes, bitch.
She was basically the first epic TV writer.
Yeah, she was quite good. So I want to tell you about one of my favorite ones, the Enchanted Horse. This one's a long one. I do apologize if we take too much time. But so the story starts out in Persia, in the city of Shiraz. It was the feast of the New Year, and everyone was partaking in the magnificent spectacles to honor the festival. The sun was setting, and the king was about to give the court its signal to retire, when an Indian man suddenly appeared before him, leading a horse made of wood garnished in riches.
Yeah.
The Indian man said, Sire, although I make your appearance so late before your royal highness, I can confidently assure you that none of these wonders that you have seen today can compare to this horse, the eighth wonder of the world. The king says, I see nothing except a clever imitation of the real one. Any skilled worksman may do as much. The Indian man replied, Sire, it is not the outward appearance that I speak of, but the use you can make of him. You have only to mount him and wish yourself in some special place, and no matter the distance, in a few moments you will find yourself there. It is this, sire, that makes the horse so marvelous, and if your highness will allow me, I shall demonstrate. The king of Persia was very interested in strange and unusual things, and has never come across a horse with such qualities. He told the Indian man to mount the horse and show what it could do. The Indian complied and got on the horse. He then inquired as to where he should go. King says, do you see that mountain? Pointing to the window with a huge mass of it towering to the sky. It's about 30 miles away in the story. Go and fetch me this leaf from the palm that grows at the base of this mountain. The words were hardly out of the king's mouth when the Indian turned and screw that was on the horse's neck, and the horse flew up into the air and was soon beyond the sight of even the sharpest eyes. In about 15 minutes, the Indian was seen returning, bearing the palm leaf in his hand. The Indian gets off his horse and presents the palm leaf to the king. The king was astonished at the speed of the horse it was capable of, and says to the Indian man, I would have never guessed from its outward appearance that it would be so valuable. How much do you want for it? Name your price. The Indian man replies, Sire, you are a wise and accomplished king, and though you might wish to possess it, I greatly prize this as well, and will only yield it on one condition. The horse was not constructed by me, but was given to me by its inventor, in exchange for my only daughter, who made me take a solemn oath that I would never part with it except for an object of equal value. The king explains, nothing. We're getting stoned here.
Getting stoned.
Name anything you like. My kingdom is large and filled with wealthy cities. You have only to choose which you would prefer. Become its ruler till the end of your life. Where's more weed?
Yeah, that's all over.
I got one more joint going. Where are you going with this?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
left it after.
Yeah.
So what do you think so far?
I like it. I mean,
It's compelling. It's
yeah,
interesting.
it's odd though that everyone seems to. It's always the big interest is banging the other guy's daughter.
Yeah, I mean,
like, hey, just someone traded me this horse for my daughter, so.
let me wait till you
I'm
hear
gonna
what
need
he
that
thinks
daughter.
of his daughter.
Oh.
Truly. So the Indian man replies, Sire, I am most grateful for your highness's princely offer and beseech you not to be offended with me. If I can say that I can only deliver up my horse in exchange for your daughter, the princess's hand in marriage. In an instant, the entire court burst into laughter. Upon hearing those words, the king's heir, Prince Faraz Shah, was furious at the Indian's presumptions, and the king, however, thought that it would not cost him much to part from his princess in order to gain such a delightful toy. See what I
daughter
mean?
for a motorcycle
Women
horse?
are often depicted in
Fuck
these
yeah.
stories as just objects of owning, pretty much. I mean, that's just how it was back in the day.
Especially there. I mean, that was yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to compare Black Lives Matter to,
no, that,
segregated women
but yeah,
and being put down. In
that was
sexism,
that was pretty. Yeah, back then was not.
They're
well, I
not-
mean, the
well, I
whole
mean, they're
point of
kinda
the story,
still
if you
not
think about
kind
it,
to
yeah.
us.
But if you think about it too, it makes sense to that kind of that all the women in the stories are kind of treated as property, being that the story is being told by someone who is in fact being treated like property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially with this one, like it seems to be a lot of that, but it totally makes sense because the basis of the story is a lady who's somebody's property telling a story. Yeah,
Pretty much. So Prince Faraz Shah says, "Father, it's not possible that you can doubt for an instant what reply you should give such an insolent bargain. I implore you to consider what you owe yourself and to the blood of our ancestors." To this, the king replies, "My boy, you speak nobly, but you do not realize either the value of the horse or the fact that if I reject this man's proposal, that he will only make the same to another monarch, and with that I should be filled with despair that anyone but myself should own this. Of course I do not say that I shall accept his conditions, and perhaps he may be brought to reason, but meanwhile I would like you to examine the horse and with the owner's permission make trial of its power."
yeah. Now listen, I can't be turning this horse down and then having the King of England fly over here and do a fucking drive-by mooning on his wooden horse. Well, I'm just sitting here with my dick in my hand and one too many daughters.
Well said, Dustin. Thank you. That's a nice comparison there. You made me lose myself. That was so funny. So the Indian overheard the king talking with his son and thought he heard in it signs of yielding to his proposal. So he joyfully agrees to the king and he joyfully agrees to the king's wish and helps the prince mount the horse. He shows him how to guide it and turn it on, but before he could show the prince how to land it, the prince turned the screw on the horse's neck and was soon out of sight. The whole court waited for some time, expecting that any minute the prince would be seen returning, and the Indian started to get scared. He went before the king and said, "Sire, you must have noticed that the prince, in his impatience, did not allow me to tell him what was necessary to do in order to return to earth. I implore you, do not punish me for what is not my fault, and not visit upon me any misfortunes that may occur." In a burst of anger and fear, the king yells, "But why? Why did you not call him back when you saw him disappearing?" And the Indian man says, "Sire, the rapidity of his movements took me by surprise, that he was out of hearing before I could recover my speech."
I was aghast.
What the fuck is this boy doing? Do what? But we must hope that he will perceive and turn the second screw, which will bring the horse back down. The king yells in reply, "And suppose he does? What's to hinder the horse from descending straight into the sea or dashing him into pieces on the rocks?" The Indian replies, "Have no fear, sire. The horse has a gift for passing over the sea and carrying its rider to safety." The king replies, "Well, your head will answer for it. If in 90 days my son is not safe back with me, or at any rate does not send me news of his safety, then I will take your life." He ordered his guards and seized the Indian and threw him in jail.
Yeah.
That's what
I
you
do
get.
like the Indian dude's response.
"Oh, that's not my fault."
Like, what if it drops him into the ocean or dashes him into the rocks? Like, no, it's pretty much like a Tesla. It drives itself for the most part. You just gotta tell it where you want to go. He doesn't know how to use the GPS.
Oh my god, can you imagine what a GPS would do for people back then? Jesus Christ. No, the world would be so much further if we had GPS long ago.
Instead, it was 2 screws, which I'm assuming is basically like an Etch-a-Sketch nailed to a fucking horse. Draw wherever you want to go.
Sorry. All right, so meanwhile, Prince Faraz Shah had gone away up into the sky, so high he could not distinguish the mountains from the plains anymore.
I can show you the stars.
That's probably where it came from.
Shimmering, shining magic.
You know, that's a poor adaptation of Aladdin and the Lamp.
It's poor.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Disney made it very child-friendly.
Well, you gotta stay one step
It
ahead
is
of
a
the
fucked
riffraff.
up story, dude. Dude, I feel for them. Anyway, we'll come across that another time.
Oh yeah,
definitely
we'll
come across that
yeah,
another
we'll go
time.
across.
This one's
we'll
so
cross
fucking
that
long. We're
bridge
just like,
later.
eh.
Yeah. We got a horse to talk about.
So he thought it was time to come down at that point. And after not being able to just no longer distinguish where the fuck he was, so he thought in order to do this, he had to turn the screw in the opposite direction. But to his horror and surprise, it didn't do a thing. Then he remembered he never waited to hear how he was supposed to come back, and that he was in trouble. Keeping a clear head, he started to examine the horse, and after a few hours, he found a second screw below the horse's ear. He turns it, and the horse starts to slowly descend.
This gotta be like literally right in your face for fucking hours.
Well, he started to examine. Well, you know, he was garnished in riches, so he thought maybe a jewel, probably on one of the, because it was garnished in finest jewels.
He didn't want to come down, is what it was.
Nah,
I think he would just. I wanted to go down. He's like, I'll just hang out. This is actually pretty cool.
So it was starting to get dark, and the prince thought it might be close to midnight. He could see nothing as he descended, and for some reason he was obligated to let the horse direct its own course. Once he landed, he felt faint and weary, and remembered that he had not eaten anything since the morning of the festival. He dismounted and started looking around, trying to figure out where the horse landed him. He discovered in the thick darkness that he was on top of a terrace of a huge palace that was balustrated in marble. In the corner of the terrace was a small door that led down into the palace, and the prince did not hesitate to explore further. He thought, I am doing no harm, and whomever the owner may be, he will not touch me when he sees I'm unarmed. Sorry. Again, it's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
So, just in case he was wrong, he cautiously followed the staircase down until he came upon a landing, and then he noticed a door that was faintly lighted, and it was a hallway down there. The prince paused by the door and heard the sounds of snoring men, so he glanced inside, and he could make out a row of guards sleeping, each with an unsheathed sword next to them.
Oh, cuddle buddies.
Just laying in a row. It's kind of weird, though. But, so the prince notices another light shining through a curtain at the end of that hallway where the guards were sleeping, and he softly walks towards it. He draws back the curtain and passes through. He came into a magnificent chamber filled with sleeping women.
Oh, shit.
So they're all sleeping on these low couches, like, together, and just kind of huddled around. Except for one woman who was sleeping on a large sofa in the middle of the room. He thought this must be their princess, and carefully sneaking up to the side of her bed, he saw that she was the most beautiful woman that he had ever seen.
It's getting real Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, Jesus. Well, as fascinated as he was well aware of the danger of his position. It's like one cry of surprise would wake the guards, and it would cause his certain death. So he sinked quietly to his knees and took hold of the princess's hand, slowly drawing her arm towards him. The princess opened her eyes, and seeing before her a handsome, well-dressed man, she remained speechless with astonishment. The prince took advantage of her speechlessness, and bowing low before her, he said, You behold, madam, a prince in distress. I am the son of the king of Persia, who am owing to you an adventure so strange you could scarcely believe it. I find myself here in need of your protection. Yesterday I was in my father's court, engaged in the celebration of our most solemn festival. Today I am in unknown land and in danger of my life. The princess tells the prince that she is the eldest daughter of the king of Bengal, and that it was not far, that they weren't far from Persia. She says to him, Prince, be not uneasy and
She was just waking up. It makes sense. Be not no. Give me a minute.
So be not uneasy. Hospitality and humanity are practiced as widely as in Bengal as they are in Persia. The protection you seek shall be given to you by all. You have my word. However great my curiosity is to learn and by which the means you arrived here, I know you must be tired and hungry, and I shall give the order to my women to take you to one of my chambers, where you will be provided with supper and left to repose. By this time, the princess's attendants were already awake and listening to their conversation. At the sign from their mistress, they rose and dressed quickly. 2 women grabbed some candles and directed the prince towards
they were
a
all
large,
naked.
lofty room. Pretty much. That's what I'm trying to talk about.
I didn't catch that part of the story. The plot thickens.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to fucking just go out of my way and just tell you.
No,
By the way, they were all
they're
naked.
all naked.
Damn.
Yeah, I'll be the one to say that. Damn.
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you do that. Use your imagination, motherfucker.
Use your imagination. Jesus. Yes, yeah.
Pack some weed up or something. This joint's almost done.
Okay, keep going. Keep going. Keep it rolling.
So 2 women grabbed some candles and directed the prince towards a large and lofty room, where they prepared his bed, and the rest of the maidens went down to the kitchen and soon returned with all sorts of dishes. They showed him the cupboard where dressings and linens were kept and left the room. During their absence, the Princess of Bengal, who had been greatly struck by the prince's beauty, tried to go back to sleep but was all in vain. When her attendants came back, she eagerly inquired if the prince had everything he needed and what they thought of him. They said, "Madam, it is impossible for us to tell you what impression this young man has made on you. For ourselves, we think you would be fortunate that your father, the king, should allow you to marry anyone so amiable. Certainly no one in the court of Bengal can be compared to him." When the princess dressed the next morning, her maids noticed that contrary to her usual habit, the princess was particular to her appearance. She told herself, "If my appearance was not displeasing to the prince when he saw me in the condition I was, how much more will he be struck by me when he beholds me with all my charms?" She found the biggest, most brilliant diamond and put it in her hair, with necklaces, bracelets, and a girdle embroidered with precious jewels. And over her shoulders her ladies put a robe made of the finest materials that only royalty was allowed to wear.
Ooh, fancy dress.
So
she putting on that going out dress.
Mm-hmm. Super sexy. Back then it wasn't, how short can my skirt be? Back
how
then
many
it was,
fucking,
how
heavy
fucking
can it be?
Can you wear?
I have a golden goose attached to my leg.
So when she felt like she was perfect, she sent a maid to see if the prince was ready to receive her. When the princess's maid entered the prince's room, he was on his way out to see if he would be allowed to pay homage to her mistress. Upon hearing the princess's wishes, he at once gave away. "Her will is my law, and I am only here to obey her orders." A few moments later, the princess came to the prince's quarters, and the princess sits down and explains to the prince why she did not let him have an audience in her own apartment. She says, "Had I done so, we might have been interrupted at any hour by the chief of the guards, who has his right to enter whenever he pleases. Whereas this place is forbidden ground for him. I am all but too impatient to learn of this wonderful accident to which has procured the pleasure of your arrival. Please begin."
Please begin.
So the prince began at the beginning, explaining that the festival is Nowruz, held yearly in Persia. All the marvels to be held that day, and when he started to explain the Enchanted Horse, the princess declared that she could never imagine such a thing. The prince continues to say, "Well then, you can easily understand my father, the king, who has a passion for strange and unique things, was violently seized with the desire to possess this horse. My father asked the Indian what sum that he would take for it, and the man's answer was absolutely absurd, as you will agree with me, bitch. He asked for nothing less than my sister's hand in marriage. Although all the bystanders mocked and laughed at this man, I was beside myself with rage. I could see only in my despair that my father could not make up his mind to treat this insolent proposal as it was. I tried to argue with him, but it was in vain. He begged me to examine the horse with the intent of making me see reason to its value.
Which you did a damn poor job of doing, kid.
Right? Horrible.
Horrible.
To please my father, I mounted the horse, and without waiting for the instructions from the Indian man, I turned the screw as I had seen him do. In an instant, I was propelled upwards, faster than an arrow loosed. I felt as though I was flying so high my head might hit the sky. I saw nothing beneath me, and as to tell you as to where I was so confused. I did not know which direction I was traveling. And alas, as it was growing dark, I found another screw on the horses and began turning it. And the horse began to descend. I was forced into trust its fate and see what it had in store for me. It was already past midnight when I found myself on top of the roof, and I crept down a little staircase and made directly for a light which I perceived through an open door. I peeped cautiously, and saw the guards laying asleep in a row. I knew the risks, but my needs were so great I paid no attention to them and stole safely past them to a curtain that was concealing your path. The rest, princess, is as you know it, and it only remains for me to thank you for all the kindness you have shown me and to assure you of my gratitude. By law of the nations, I am already your slave, and I have only my heart that is my own. But what am I saying? My own heart?
My own heart?
Madam, it was yours from the moment I first laid eyes upon you.
Damn, he's just throwing it on thick.
Fucking
yeah, just
I mean,
putting
honestly,
it down.
Like,
I will romance you. You did not need to wear 1,000 pounds of jewels.
Was that an ostrich egg on your head?
An ostrich egg? Are those just
that a
2
diamond?
gold bars? Just 2 full-length gold bars?
Just as earrings.
Yeah, just
Jesus,
as
just ripping her ears down. Jesus. The princess blushed, only adding more beauty to her. She paused for a moment, collecting her thoughts before saying, Prince, you have given me great pleasure in your company. Your adventure stories have reached us beyond Bengal, and I must admit that I admire the stories. I must say what a debt I owe to chance, that you landed on my palace, and you could have none which would have given you a warmer welcome. As for you being a slave, that must merely be a joke, as I assure you that you are free here, as you are in your father's court. As for your heart, I'm sure that it's been disposed of long ago to another princess who was well worthy of it, and I cannot be the cause of your unfaithfulness to her. The prince was about to protest that there was no such woman in his life, but he was interrupted by one of the princess's maids. He came to announce that dinner was ready.
Dinner served! God damn it, Janet.
Fucking
Can't you
Karen.
see? We were in the middle of a moment. We were having a moment. You interrupted it.
You fucking shit up, bitch. What the hell?
We all know dinner's ready. It's dinner time. You don't have to come tell us.
Man. So dinner was laid out in a luxurious and magnificent room. The table was covered with delicious roasts and fruits. There were richly dressed women in the corner of the room that sang soft and sweetly to stringed instruments.
Oh, killing me softly? Is that what they were
Probably, I
singing? Yeah. Doing
You
a
never know.
little, doing a little
Apparently they looked good.
cover song
Not
there.
good enough to fucking make mention of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe.
they must have been. Yeah, they were shredding enough that they had to get pointed out in the story.
I'm just saying. So after they finished eating, the prince and princess passed through a small room and came out into a garden that was stocked with flowers and arbutus trees, quite different than any the prince had ever seen before. He turns to the princess and says, "Let's get high." Until now, I have believed that Persia could boast no finer palaces or more lovelier gardens than any place on earth. But my eyes have been opened, and I begin to perceive that wherever there is a great king, he will surround himself with structures worthy of himself. The princess replies, I have no idea what Persian palaces should look like, so I am unable to make the comparison for myself.
I know you're trying to say something, kid, but it's totally lost on me.
I do not wish to speak poorly of my own palace, but I assure you it was the simplest designs we could afford. I wish to make you an audience with my father so that he can confer this. With that being said, she had hoped that this meeting between the prince and her father would make the king so taken with the prince that he would offer her as a bride to him. But the Prince of Persia's reply was not what she hoped, and told her, Madam, I cannot possibly take advantage of your proposal and visit the palace of the King of Bengal. Please understand that I cannot present myself before such a great sovereign without attendants suitable to my rank. He would think me a common traveler. The princess giggles and says, If that is all, you can get as many attendants here as you like. There are plenty of Persian merchants in the city. As for money, you no doubt need to obtain these. Please help yourself to my treasury, as it will always be open to you. The prince guessed what the princess's intentions were and was touched by her attempts, but still could not forget his duty to his father, and without hesitation he told her, I do not know, sweet princess, how to express my gratitude to your generosity. I wish I could accept your offer, but the sudden recollection of the uneasiness my father must be suffering due to my absence. I should be indeed unworthy of all of his love that he showers me with if I do not return to his side the first possible moment. I should be in despair, although I do admit that I am enjoying the company of the most beautiful and amiable of all princesses I've met.
Just throwing it down thick.
He's a fucking charmer.
Playing hard to get at the same time. Okay, she's into me now. She's into me. Ah, princess. Alas, I must leave.
So, your most beautiful princess I've ever met. I am quite convinced you understand my predicament, that I cannot break my father's heart with my absence. But I must obey the voice of my conscience, and count the moments when I may present myself to the king, not as a simple traveler, but as a true prince of Persia, so that I may properly implore for the favor of your hand. My father has always told me that when it comes to my marriage, that I was free to follow my heart. I have only to describe your gracious generosity to my father before his wishes to become mine. Or my wishes to become his. You know, sorry, my bad, I got that backwards.
Yeah, little Prince of Persia action.
Dude,
yeah.
suave, right?
Yeah.
Dude. So the princess was all too reasonable not to accept the prince's explanation. But she was saddened at the intention of departing at once, and she feared that no sooner that he should leave than the impression she had made on him would fade from his memory. So she made one more attempt to keep the prince there. She told him that she entirely agreed with his anxiety to see his father and begged him to give her a day or two more of his companionship. The prince was too polite and refused the princess's request. Go on.
Too polite. I just thought instantly, like, the offer to keep him is right, you know, right there. Gaze upon my breast and taketh thine hand job.
Wow.
You know what? Yeah, Dad can wait. It's cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll hang for a little while. Yeah.
So the princess went to work, and she found every kind of amusement that she could find. She was so successful that it lasted for 60 days.
Damn.
That's how good she was. But one day, the prince declared that he could no longer neglect his duty to his father and promised to return as soon as possible. He tells the princess, please do not let your heart label me with those false lovers whose devotion cannot withstand the test of absence. I fear I would offend you if I were to ask you to come with me, for my life can only be happy with your presence. The princess told him she had no objections to traveling with him back to Persia on the Enchanted Horse, but she wished to leave in secret. So the following morning, while the palace was still asleep, they snuck up to the roof where the horse still was. And the prince helped the princess mount the horse and then jumped up behind her. He guided the horse's head towards the direction of Persia and then turned the screw on the horse's neck. The horse quickly shot up into the sky, and after 3 hours of correctly directing the horse, the prince soon saw in the distance the capital of Persia. He decided he would descend the horse at an exquisite country house of his family's. I'm assuming it was his family's.
He's trying to show it off.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, check out my vacation house.
Yeah. It was just a short distance from the palace. And he gave the princess a beautiful suite of rooms and asked for her to rest here while he informs his father of their arrival. He wanted to prepare a public reception worthy of her rank.
He wanted to get back at her for throwing shade on Persian architecture earlier. She's like, it sounds nice, but I don't even know what you're talking about. I thought you guys just lived in huts or something.
Just sleep here now. This is
go check out this. This is my fucking vacation house,
this is
lady.
A cottage,
yeah,
dude. This is our cottage.
Yeah, sure. How was your garden? Yeah, garden wasn't shit.
Okay.
I was being polite.
So then he ordered a saddled horse and rode it back to the palace. The whole way back, the streets were filled with people shouting with joy from the sight of their prince. Once he got to the palace, he sought out his father, who was surrounded by his ministers, all in mourning by the prince's absence. When his father hears his son's voice, he jumps up in delight at the sight of him. When the king calmed down, he begged his son to tell him of his adventure. The prince Verzah told his father of his treatment from the princess of Bengal, and not even hiding the fact that they had fallen in love and wished to be married. He says to his father, I have given my royal word to her, that you would not refuse our consent to marry. So I persuaded her to return with me to the Indian's man horse. I left her in one of our family's cottages, just a short ride from here, and she is waiting anxiously to be assured that I have not given her false promises. The king embraces his son and says, My son, I not only gladly consent to your marriage to the princess of Bengal, but I must hasten to pay my respects to her in person. We must fetch her at once and bring her back here. We will make all the arrangements for your wedding to be celebrated today.
Oh, damn. Dad's pushing it up.
Fucking ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it was back in the day. They're like, you ready to do this? Let's do this. The fucking
you want to marry her?
not doing
then
shit.
you're fucking
Let's go.
going to marry her.
No one else has got any fucking festival. Let's go.
Exactly. We will literally have the whole town here in 30 minutes.
So, I know, right? So the king waves his hands and his attendants set to work.
Poor attendants, man. They're the ones you feel for.
Hey, at least these ones are paid slaves.
Yeah, paid slaves.
Bengal, we'll talk further in this one because we're going other places with this story. This story is nowhere near the end.
Nowhere near the end. Yeah, we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it up. This might turn into a two-parter, folks. So
yeah, I know, right?
Might turn into a two-parter. Just be prepared.
So the king also demanded that the Indian man should be released from prison and brought before him. After a few moments had passed, the Indian man is presented to the king. The king says to him, I have kept you locked away in case my son did not return to me. He did indeed return, so you may now take your horse and be gone from my lands. The Indian man turned around and left immediately. When he got outside, he saw the guard that had brought him before the king and inquired to him what had truly happened to the prince. The guard told him everything, even that the princess was in a nearby cottage. At once this gave the Indian man an idea for revenge for the treatment that he had experienced. So he went straight to the cottage to inform the doorkeeper that was left in charge that he had been sent by the king and the prince to fetch the princess and bring her back to the palace on the Enchanted Horse. The doorkeeper knew who the Indian man was and when he was presented before, he was there.
Yeah, he was there. He saw the shit go down.
He saw everything, yeah. And the man thought the Indian man spoke the truth and fetched the princess.
Gotta fetch that princess.
Pipe, man. You've just been holding it.
Sorry, I've been enthralled by this story.
Yeah, I told you would.
It's a story of intrigue and wooden motorcycle horses and ladies covered in an uncomfortable amount of jewelry. Just an uncomfortable amount. And dudes that just, spit that old school game. Gotta appreciate that old school game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the doorman brought the princess outside where the Indian man was waiting next to the Enchanted Horse. The Indian man was delighted with his success with his scheme. He mounted the horse and assisted the princess up behind him. He turned the screw and they flew up. He directed the horse to go over the city, for he knew that the prince and the king would be setting out to retrieve the princess and wanted them to see his revenge for his unjust imprisonment.
Oh, I don't like where this is going. Indian man's turning into a bad guy all of a sudden. He's making a fuck. Prison must have been rough.
He said
on
he
him.
would be fine. You didn't believe him.
Yeah.
With truth, he has his fucking eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But he gets
you got your son, but I got the eighth wonder of the world that your son
didn't even have to do 90 days. Though.
Exactly, but he was going to be beheaded.
That's a quick
if
time
he
to
didn't come
break.
Back.
Yeah, that's a quick time to break.
Anyway, whatever. We can argue this all we want. There's two sides to the story, you know what I mean? So the king and prince did indeed see them in the sky, and they were horrified and furious, but none so more than the prince. The prince was speechless with grief, seeing his love fly away and out of sight, blaming himself for not have guarding her better. He tells his father that he will not return without her, and commanded his servants to bring him traveler's clothes to disguise himself, and he sets out in the direction of the Enchanted Horse was headed. Meanwhile, the princess and the Indian man had been traveling for hours, and the Indian man decided that it was time for food. He set the horse down in the wooded forest near the kingdom of Kashmir.
Oh, going Led Zeppelin on us.
All right, so he left the princess by a stream in a shady place. At first, when the princess was alone, she did think to run and get away, but she had scarcely eaten anything since she had left Bengal.
I mean, I've been there
and
too.
felt too weak to venture, so she abandoned the idea.
Well, you're just sitting by a nice stream in the shade, and you're like, I don't really want to go anywhere.
At least he was pretty nice enough to leave her there.
Yeah,
You know
I
what
could run away, but phew, man, did he pick an awesome spot to lay me down. Unless they meant shady as in, like, it's the bad part of town.
No, that's not.
Like,
I knew you were going to
be
fucking
on
say
this
that.
side of the
I knew
stream.
you were going to fucking say that shit too as soon as I read
People
that.
get cut on this side of the stream all the time.
When the Indian man returned, he had all sorts of different meats and fruits, and the entire time while the princess's company, the Indian man was threatening her, like the whole time. He was just being a dick. Sit down, bitch. Fuck you, bitch.
Fuck
Smack you.
Oh,
Shut up.
see? Yeah,
You know
he's
what I mean?
making
He
a
was being a
total
dick
turn. He's
The
making
whole
a
time
total
he was
fucking
fucking
character
threatening
turn.
her.
You know,
So-
Indian man started out and it was like, I can get by this dude. He's okay. But he made a total fucking character turn.
Yeah, dude, right? So, once she gained enough energy back from eating, she sprang to her feet and started screaming for help. Her cries were not in vain, for a troop of horsemen hunting nearby had overheard the cries of help and went to inquire the situation. The leader of the horsemen was the king of Kashmir, and he turned to the Indian man and asked him who the woman was. The Indian man replies rudely that she was his wife, and that there was no reason for anyone to interfere, as... back in the day,
She's mine.
You don't inquire to the woman. But the princess cries to the man, asking the questions, and says, "My lord, whoever you may be, put no faith in this impostor's story. He is a monster who has torn me from my beloved prince of Persia, who is destined to be my husband, and brought me here against my wishes." She started to choke on her tears, and the king of Kashmir was so convinced by her story and beauty that he ordered his men to kill the Indian man. And they did so swiftly.
Yeah,
Swiftly.
dude. That's why you don't make a character turn like that.
I know, right? So, although it seemed like the princess had gotten out of one peril, it seems that she found herself into another one.
Oh, that dude wants to bang her.
The king of Kashmir gives her a horse and leads her back to his palace. He gives her a beautiful apartment with a fine selection of female slaves to wait on her. Before she could thank him, the king tells her to rest and repose, and that he would have her tell him of her adventures the next day. So she fell asleep, flattered that all she had to do was relate her story to the king and for him to be touched by her compassion to restore her to her prince. However, the king of Kashmir had a different idea. When he left her, he found his attendants and proclaimed that the next sun will not set without that princess being his wife. And immediately preparations were made. The next morning...
2 weddings at the same time?
Oh, shit.
Shit's getting intense.
So the prince... So, I mean, this, like... I guess it couldn't have been for very long. So...
Oh, they got that horse magic.
This all happened really fast, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I guess... never mind, I'll explain shit later. Okay. The next morning, the princess was awoken by the sounds of celebration outside and did not think in her wildest dreams that they were meant for her. After she dresses, the king comes to inquire on her health and tells her that the noise outside is part of a solemn marriage ceremony that she must begin preparing for she was the star of it. Overwhelmed with horror for the explanation, she faints and falls to the floor. Her maids rush to her aid as well as the king, and they try their hardest to bring the princess back to consciousness. But none. No good. No good. For hours passed before she was able to slowly come back to herself. When she was able to fully collect herself, she thought, rather than break faith to her beloved prince and consent to the king of Kashmir's marriage, she decided to pretend to go mad and began flailing her arms about and speaking all sorts of absurdities and strange gestures.
So you fucking, yeah, I'm doing a thing.
As you flail your arms everywhere, you're gonna knock your
this
microphone.
asshole, he fucking, he comes with the fucking, I got a fucking horse and fucking Indian guy and fucking horse over here, and now I'm fucking king dude wants to fucking,
So the king stood by watching her, hoping that she would snap out of it, but she shows no signs of abating it.
Just a 30-minute rant of that. And then this fucking guy, and this guy comes in, fucking kills the Indian guy, and I'm fucking, here, I'm fucking 100 fucking slaves.
So he orders her attendants to take the greatest care of her and then took his leave. He's like, I'm going to stand here and watch her for like 30 minutes and then I'm going to walk away.
Yeah, I'll give you a minute. You guys handle this.
I'm not going to do this. So days had passed and the princess continued to act mad. The king ordered all the doctors in his land to come together and consult over the princess's state.
It's just 2 whole days of it.
Days passed,
yeah.
as it says. Days. So that's
what
plural,
seems to
so
be the
maybe a
problem,
week.
princess? What? This fucking guy, and I'm over here, and then fucking, you got 90 slaves, can't get a fucking goddamn decent coffee in the morning. There's fucking, then fucking going to the, fucking goddamn.
Right. So the doctors came together. Their conclusion was that there were many states of madness and that it was impossible to give their opinion without seeing her. So one by one, the king would let into her chambers a physician to go check on her. And the king's decision was foreseen by the princess and knew that if she lets them feel her pulse, that most of the physicians would be ignorant to say that she was in perfect health. As each doctor approached her, she broke out into a violent temper and not one dared touch her. A few doctors pretended to be clever and said that they could diagnose her without literally seeing her. They ordered potions that were brought to her and assured that they were harmless, so she drank them all. Nothing happened. Probably a few beard-haired screw.
Why not? I mean, fucking, I'm over here, and at this point, why not?
So when the king of Kashmir saw that none of the physicians could do anything for her, he called upon the citizens of his land to see if they could fare better. He also sent messengers to neighboring kingdoms with a memorandum containing the particulars of the princess's madness. The king offered to pay for all the expenses of traveling and a huge reward to the one who could cure her. Many foreigners came to Kashmir, but naturally none were more successful than the last. During this time, Prince Firoz Shah had been hopelessly traveling from town to town in hopes of finding his whereabouts to his princess.
Oh, he didn't even know she went to Kashmir, huh?
He didn't know. No. He just started fucking heading in the direction of the horse.
And he doesn't even have that super horse. What happened to the super horse? Is it just down by the river somewhere? They just leave it there?
Don't worry, we'll get there.
No, we'll get there.
Finally, he came to a large city, the prince, Shah, where everyone was talking about a beautiful princess that has lost her senses. On the day of her wedding, no less. The prince was ecstatic and prayed that this rumored princess was the one he was looking for, and set about making a plan to rescue her. So the first thing he does is he buys a doctor's robe, and during that time of searching, his beard had grown rather long, making him look like a professional doctor. So he had been traveling for so long that his beard went poof. And then he looked like a fucking real doctor.
And that's how you know. That's how you know, not to break out of the story to the fourth wall. But that's how you know, what was her name that's telling the story? Charizard.
Yes.
Charizard.
Sure.
So, Shahrazad, that's how you can tell she's like a badass storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
Because she already knows the, like, trick that we still use in movies now. It's like, he's been gone. He's been traveling a while. How can we indicate that? Give him a beard. So he was traveling, and now we see him, and he has this fat, magnificent beard. And you're like, he was traveling for a while, and he's a badass.
He was a skinny little dude. Now he's this big, beefy man.
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah. All right. So,
How many pages?
like 5. So during this time, his searching was really long, and he looked like a professional doctor. He set out to the palace to obtain an audience with the king of Kashmir, and the king gladly accepted and asked how he planned to cure her when no one else could.
This
So the prince apologized for his boldness at his presumptions and explains that he had secret remedies that have never failed. Yeah. The king then tells the prince that the mere sight of a doctor throws the princess into a rage. So he leads the prince up to a room under the roof where the observation deck could be seen with the princess down below. No, and they couldn't be seen. So
creeper room.
her room. There's a fucking observation deck, apparently.
I built this after she got
yeah.
sick. I didn't already have this built, I promise. This wasn't.
Right.
This isn't just a normal thing.
So the prince peered over and saw that it was indeed his beloved princess. And she was reclining on a sofa with tears in her eyes, and she was singing softly to herself.
Mm-hmm.
The prince's heart beats ever so fast as he listened to her song story about destiny depriving her from the one that she loved. The prince needed no further proof that her madness was fake and that it was truly her love for him that made her act this way. He tells the king that the princess was not incurable, but must speak with her alone, and the king consented to this. He ordered everyone to leave, and the king left as well. The prince made his way down and entered the princess's apartment, and as soon as the princess caught sight of the doctor's robe, she jumps up and starts wailing in fury at him, throwing insults. So she's not, like, actually physically hitting him. She's just like,
she's
you
wailing.
motherfucker,
She's
you
wailing
fucking
on him
bitch.
with insults.
You know what I mean?
That's
She's
funny.
just fucking throwing that out.
Yeah.
The
Little
prince-
pencil dick motherfucker. Little pencil dick bitch. Pencil dick bitch.
The prince took no notice to her behavior and approached her quite close, so that only she could hear what he had to say. He whispers to her, "Look at me close, my beloved, for you can see that I am no doctor, but the Prince of Persia, here to set you free." At the sound of the prince's voice, it instantly filled the princess with joy. He told her that he swore to follow her to the ends of the earth and asked the princess how she came to be there, so that they could devise a plan to rescue her. She told him her whole situation and that she was forced to play a mad woman in order to avoid marriage to a king whom did not even have the common decency to ask for her consent.
Yeah.
She added that she would rather die than be forced to be into such a union. The prince inquired if she knew what had happened to the enchanted horse, and after the Indian had died. She replied that she didn't know, and that not even the king knows of its true value. The prince consults the princess, and together they devise a plan for escape. To start, the princess dressed properly to receive the king with civility upon the next morning. And then the next morning... And this continued for like a couple days until he was like, he gains the trust of the physician and shit like that. You know what I mean?
He's playing like he's
know what I mean?
a doctor.
Yeah. So the king was delighted with the results of the interview with the princess and soon had full confidence in the prince's physicianal skills. The prince was still pretending to be a physician the entire time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Playing doctor.
the prince asked the king, how did the princess of Bengal come so far from her father's kingdom and all alone? And the king thought this question was natural and told him of how he came across her. He told him he ordered the enchanted horse be taken to his treasury as a curiosity. And the prince tells the king, "Sire, your highness's tale has supplied me with the very clue I need in order to complete the princess's full recovery." He tells the king we needed to make a spectacle of reenacting the princess's troubled time, and wanted to put the enchanted horse in Kashmir's city square with 4 braziers around the horse. He would need to burn perfumes while he performs the ceremony.
Real doctor-like stuff.
Yeah, it's like shaman shit, dude.
Yeah, she's got a thing. I need four braziers, some incense, wooden horse.
Just all sorts of shit, like a little bit of Trojan shit.
Yeah.
The next day, the king demanded the enchanted horse and 4 braziers be brought to the square. He commanded the princess be dressed in the riches, the most valuable jewels in his kingdom. Make her look dope.
You gotta get her all jeweled up.
Yeah.
God, that's the thing that's wrong with the poor girl.
Too much weight.
Too much weight. She's carrying around a lot of extra weight with all those fucking jewels.
That's 150 pounds worth of diamonds on her. I was kidding.
Do you want to take a break? Or do you want to just finish? Let's do it. Yeah, we're going to keep going.
So, in the richest jewels, the princess was brought to the square and made to sit upon the horse. A crowd started to gather, encouraging one another that something extraordinary was about to happen. And the guards were called upon to keep the people back so that the prince could in disguise, could perform the ceremony. The prince started throwing different perfumes in the braziers and started enchanting an unknown oddities as he circled the princess sitting on the horse. Soon the perfumes burning on the hot coals produced so much thick smoke that the prince and princess were completely concealed by it. The prince then quickly jumps up behind the princess upon the horse and turns the screw on the horse's neck. As the horse shoots up, the prince yells loud enough for all to hear, "King of Kashmir, when you wish to marry a princess who seeks your protection, you must first learn to gain their consent." Mm-hmm. And the prince directs the horse back to the palace in Persia. And it descends in front of his father, and the kingdom of Persia rejoices at the prince and princess's return. And an ambassador is sent to Bengal to inform the king there what had happened to his daughter, and that she consented to the marriage to the prince of Persia, and that the king of Persia wished an alliance. Yeah. And once the ambassador returned with the king of Bengal's consent, the 2 lovers were finally married, and they lived happily ever after.
And then also they sent an ambassador to Kashmir with a box full of human shit and a note that just said, "Suck it."
I don't even think he knew it was him.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you got to rub it in his face afterwards, because you know he's going to be like, as soon as I find that son of a bitch, and then he's going to find out it's the Prince of Persia, and he's going to be like, "Ah, damn it. I can't do anything. I'm just Kashmir. That's Persia." Wow, man, that is quite the wild ride of a story. Nice happy ending, though.
Yeah.
Nice happy ending.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I got a little on the edge of my seat a couple times. I thought that dude was gonna throw her off the horse over the city square.
That'd be so horrible.
I thought that was what was gonna happen, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be the horrible end to a story." She gets thrown off the horse. The prince goes to alcoholism. Right. They never even talk about what happened to the prince's sister. You know what I mean? Yeah. All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the story.
Let me tell you a reference.
Yep. So we got most of our information, and I say we very lightly because Kymbo does all of the research. As you can tell, I'm pretty much hearing most of this story for the first time, so that was pretty fun, pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Get to be there with you guys on this one. Yeah, she got a lot of her information from sacredtext.com, The Enchanted Horse from the book The Arabian Nights by Andrew Lang in 1898. Mm-hmm. Damn, son. Hitting that old school shit. And Great Mythologies of the World, lecture presented by Catherine McClymond.
PhD.
PhD?
From Georgia
State University.
Yeah.
Yep. And, well, folks, thank you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've had fun. We're going to be hitting you with a ton more stories. Kim's already so far ahead on research over here that, expect them to just keep
I just
hitting
grew
you.
up knowing most of these stories.
I
but
know,
this
yeah.
was one that I actually
the
had
next
never
one, the next one,
heard
I'll
of
have more to
before.
contribute because I kind of know more about it. But you know, this one was definitely exciting, and I hope y'all feel the same way.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.